Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Countdown to Reopening, Expert Insights on Preparing for the Future While Dealing with Uncertainty, Part 3. We'll be back in about a minute to give people a chance to file in, and we'll see you in a minute. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for coming to yet another Best Practices webinar. We have a great slate of panelists who are going to share some really interesting insights on what's happening in their districts. But before we get into it, I'm going to ask Transfinder CEO, President and CEO Antonio Civitella to come join us and say a few words. Tony.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Rick. Good to
Hello.
see you. Hello, everybody. Well, welcome. It's Tuesday, so as I was mentioning to the panelists, it's our best practices day. It's always exciting. It is our last one for this month of July. I can't believe how fast this month is flying by. August is on its way, and of course, we always look at going back to school. Then the month of August, to get all prepared and getting all the supplies, so I can feel it's coming. And obviously, we're preparing. Our son's going to go to school and some sort of hybrid. So we're going to make sure, get the new sneakers out and all that stuff. We're going to still continue plowing forward with that kind of stuff here. But we get so much feedback on a weekly basis. And thank you for everyone to really just giving us information, what kind of things we're thinking about, what kind of things you want to see. And we all know this is crunch time at this point. It is really at this point. A lot of our clients do open up in the month of August, and some of them, of course, have extended, but we have tons of experts that want to be involved, and today is one of those great panelists that we have. I want to personally thank Bill, Lisa, and Chad for really just being part of today's panel, and of course, we're excited about what's going on in this industry, and really thank you for taking time from your busy schedule, just getting ready for your school and being part of today's webinar. I want to remind everybody that these webinars are always being recorded. You could find these webinars and all the past webinars. We've done dozens of them already since March. They're all there, best practices. They're off our transfinder.com webpage. Just find the best practice pages and just have to just go through. There's topics. And some don't even make any sense anymore, right? Because it's past, things have changed, you guys have pivoted. But just to let you know, it is being recorded. The other thing I want to remind everyone that we have a communication tool. It's called StopFinder. It's a StopFinder communication. We're offering it as a free tool. It's an app that you can share information with your parents. It's communicating with them. So let you know it's still free till December 31st this year. If you want more information, please email us at freestopfinder@transfinder.com, and we'll get you started on that. But let's get on this webinar. I'm going to pass it to Rick. He's the moderator for today. And Rick, it's all you, and of course, I'll be inside here.
Before you go off, so did you do the back-to-school shopping already for Alessio?
I'm not an early bird kind of person, so I like to, close.
When I was in school, you did not want to wear, especially like later years, like junior high and high school, you did not want to wear brand new clothes and brand new sneakers because you'd get like kids stepping on your shoes and going, oh, Dorico has new shoes. I don't know. That happened to you too?
Well, everyone right now has to make sure you get the nice crisp shorts and pants, whatever you have. Of course, the nice shoes and the backpacks got to look different because everyone's got to post it on the first day of school.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
No, it's got to be awesome. Whether he wears those shoes.
That didn't exist when we were kids.
So no, I know, but it is exciting. I do feel that there's a little bit of something is normal that school is going to start in some way, right? Whether it's going to be remote or hybrid or just like it was other years. Even that is, I feel like school is coming. I feel a little bit something being normal. So that's my point.
Good. Thanks so much, Tony. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Again, welcome. I just thank our panelists. I want to welcome our panelists, Bill Andexler of Akron Public Schools in Ohio. Welcome, Bill. You can pop on screen. Lisa Casey of Summit School District in Colorado. And you can also pop on, and Chad Welker of Twinsburg City Schools in Ohio. So today we're outnumbered by the Ohioans. Is that what they call you guys, Ohioans? Is that right?
Yes, the Ohioans, the Buckeyes.
Last week we were outnumbered by Colorado, folks in Colorado. So anyway, we're so happy that you could join us. I also want to make sure that everybody who is attending today, first of all, let you know we can't hear you, but you can submit questions, and we go to questions as quickly as we can. So as you're listening to this, if there's something that stands out that you want to ask, you can ask either one of the panelists specifically. You can say, Bill, I have a question for you, or Lisa or Chad, or you can just ask a general question. I will try to go to those as soon as I can. And Bridget Moore is also assisting on the back end. So I want to thank Bridget so much for helping as well today. Before we jump in, I wanted to read a little bit about something that I read recently on the CDC website. They put out, it's called The Importance of Reopening America's Schools This Fall. The Importance of Reopening America's Schools This Fall. So last week I read some intense headlines from the New York Times, Washington Post, some other news outlets, basically where one of the stories had teachers in Iowa that were sending their governor their obituaries. So basically saying, if you send us to school, you're basically putting a death sentence on us. Today's headlines in the New York Times has another one that literally, this is a fresh headline from just a couple hours ago that says, quote, teachers will get COVID-19, period. What will schools do? Question mark. I want to be have a little more of a positive outlook today. And we obviously know we're dealing with, uncertain times as the title of today's webinar. But here's what the CDC says. Bear with me, it's a little bit long, but I think it's worth reading. As families and policymakers make decisions about their children returning to school, it is important to consider the full spectrum of benefits and risks of both in-person and virtual learning options. Parents are understandably concerned about the safety of their children at school in the wake of COVID-19. The best available evidence indicates if children become infected, they are far less likely to suffer severe symptoms. Death rates among school-age children are much lower than among adults. I know that that's a terrible sentence to even think about. At the same time, the harms attributed to closed schools on the social, emotional, and behavioral health, economic well-being, and academic achievement of children in both the short and long term are well known and significant. Further, the lack of in-person educational options disproportionately harms low-income and minority children and those living with disabilities. Those children are far less likely to have access to private instruction and care, and far more likely to rely on key school-supported resources like food programs, special education services, counseling, and after-school programs to meet basic developmental needs. And here's the kicker of a sentence and why we're all here today. Aside from a child's home, no other setting has more influence on a child's health and well-being than their school. I'm going to read that one more time. Aside from a child's home, no other setting has more influence on a child's health and well-being than their school. And that's why we're here. And that's why you all are working tirelessly to make sure that school can open as close to on time as possible, as safe as possible, and looking at all the what ifs scenarios to make it all work. And I commend you all and our attendees as well. I know are working hard to make that happen. So we're going to jump in. Before we jump into our actual questions that I have already for you, I wanted to see if we could just start with you all introducing yourselves, your district, a little bit about your, something that kind of gives us a sense of your district, maybe how many students you transport or how many, bus runs you have, whatever it is can kind of give us a sense of your district and your role in the school. And we'll start with William, Bill, and then we'll go to Lisa and Chad, and then we'll jump into some questions. So Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, well, my name obviously is Bill Andexler. I am the coordinator of transportation at Akron Public Schools in Ohio. Akron is considered one of the Ohio 8 schools, whether it's the Big 8 or the Ohio 8. We're Toledo, Cleveland, Akron, Youngstown, they're all in the Ohio 8 schools. We have approximately 22,000 students in our district. We're responsible overseeing all the transportation for that, whether it's a yellow bus, contracted yellow bus, parents, public transportation, independent contractors with vans, and payment in lieu. We have 6 high schools, 6 middle schools, and about 30 elementaries in our district.
Great, thanks so much. Lisa, welcome. I can't hear you. Sorry.
Right, can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm Lisa Casey. I'm from Summit School District. We're about 9,800 feet up into the mountains. So for us, we're really small. We have about 18 routes, about 3,600 students, and we transport approximately about 12 to 1,500, depending on if it's wintertime or not. Do we transport those students? With us, we are kind of away from all of the bigger districts, which are down in Denver area. And so we are kind of fortunate in a sense of being able to manipulate and utilize our services a little bit better, whereas you look into the Denver area and they have multitude of several different language and students. So for us, I think we're really fortunate to be in the area that we're in. The only thing that does bring us a little bit of a heartache is our resort town. And that brings in a lot of workers. So all those workers have to work and we have to transport their students.
Great, well, thanks for that perspective, appreciate it. And Chad?
I'm Chad Welker. I'm the business manager of Twinsburg City School District. We're a suburb of Cleveland, or depending on how you might view it, maybe even Akron. But we have approximately 4,250 students in our district, and we transport around 3,000 in a typical year. And we have around 40 bus routes in our district. So very excited to be here.
Great, thanks so much, Chad. So for starters, can you give me just, what is the main issue that you're facing as you reopen? Maybe that's different than past years. How would you sum up like the main nut to crack as you start reopening? And it can be anybody, all three of you, but maybe Lisa, I'll start with you, Lisa, and then we'll go to Chad and Bill.
Well, I know for us, it started off with a 6-foot rule. Luckily, our community and our state opened it up to where we can at least have 50% on those buses. The next choice is who gets to ride. You know, who do we pick out of those students that get to ride the bus when we know that everybody needs to have that opportunity? We just put out a survey last night, and so far out of the 3,600 people we have that join our schools, we've had about 270 people respond. Out of that 270, we have 160 families that said that they have to have transportation. But that's still a far cry from really knowing the exact numbers. So for us, it's finding out how we're going to get those on. We are going to be doing the double routes, and then we have to look at who's the biggest need and the biggest need area. So that's what's been our challenge.
Okay, great. How about you, Chad?
So I think for us, our biggest challenge has been making sure that we communicate our transportation challenges with our superintendent and board, and make sure that they're understanding the situation at hand. We typically have, as I'm sure most of you, 48 or sometimes even more students on a bus, and right now we're trying to figure out how to have 24 on a bus. And so we've worked real hard. We've had about 26 different academic scenarios of what school might look like. And we've worked real hard at making our transportation system understandable in a one-page document for our superintendent and board, as far as like what are our limitations, how many buses do we have available, and taking a look at different scenarios of, if we go to state minimums, what does that result in? If we go to eliminating high school transportation, what does that do? And getting an idea of making sure they realize that if we had a couple of these different scenarios, we might be going to school until 6, 7 o'clock at night because of how many kids we would need to transport. So I think that's been one of the biggest things, is trying to make our transportation system understandable to our board and superintendent, to make sure that we summarize that. And here's our key metrics that we're looking at. We're starting to get our numbers back. We have about 2/3 of our students going bricks and mortar, 1/3 going virtual. We do have 2 models, and we're starting to figure out how many kids are requiring transportation, which of the kids going bricks and mortar, we're probably another 2/3 requiring transportation. And so we're starting to get a better understanding of based on our model, what additional transportation features we're allowed to include to try to transport the most number of kids in our district.
So, quick question before I go to Bill. If you got 1/3 are going to be virtual or remote, right?
Yep.
So are they remote just for the semester, or are they remote for a quarter, or can they be remote for a month and then say, you know what, we want to come back in? Has that been determined?
Yeah, so for us, we are encouraging parents to make a commitment for a semester. However, we understand that there can be extenuating circumstances, and so on individual basis, we might wind up handling some individual situations. But with that, we've made sure during our virtual town hall meetings, Q&A sessions, that we have let the parents know that our flexibility in transportation is not as great as it might have been in prior years. And so making sure people realize that it might be a couple weeks or so for us to figure out how to make the adjustments to the routes, because we really are limited by that 24 capacity based on what our board decided as far as our capacity for buses.
It sounds like you're trying to really manage expectations here in the midst of this scenario. One last question for you, and then I'll go to Bill, just because you jarred a couple of thoughts to me. You mentioned the superintendent and the board, keeping them in the loop, and I'm just wondering, do you feel like you have a seat at the table in terms of decision makers? Are they thinking about, is transportation part of the conversation when they're thinking about returning to school?
Absolutely. We're really fortunate to have a great superintendent and great board of education. And I think the key is just making sure that you make sure that the board and superintendent hear your concerns and your message, because transportation really does drive a lot of what you're able to do academically. And what schedules, like what start times people have. Of course, all of us would love to have an 8 o'clock start time and a 3 o'clock end time, or something like that. But we certainly realize that transportation is what drives a lot of those decisions about start times, just based on, do I have enough buses and drivers available? So no, our board has been terrific, and superintendent in giving us a seat at the table to share our concerns.
Great, thanks so much.
Yep.
Bill, how about you? What's your main issue as you guys focus on reopening?
Well, just like everybody else, the main issue is how we're going to get the kids to school. We've been working on that since April, right after the governor in Ohio shut down the schools. Actually shut them down in March, but we started planning in April of what we're going to do. By joining or by networking together with people in Ohio, that's the best thing you can do, is communicate and try to get in different groups. Something like this that we're doing right now is that try to get the best scenarios that everybody's using. Maybe not the best scenarios, but different scenarios that everybody's using. And I originally put out a plan probably about a month and a half ago, and I wanted to put my plan out there first for transportation, because I didn't want the superintendent, the board, or whatever have to worry about transportation. So it's like, here's what I can do, so they can work around that then. And what I'm saying that is how many kids I can put on a bus. So that was my first priority, was getting that approved. How many kids I can put on a bus. And actually I got a green light from our local health department. Okay, not saying that what they say, what we can do and we can't do, is just that at least we have their approval. Okay, and there's a lot to that. We're going to put 2 kids to a seat, which that's reducing the number of students by 1/3 on a bus. And there's other things we're putting in place, like circulation of air, putting sanitizer in. In Ohio, up until about a month ago, the largest bottle of sanitizer that we could put on a bus was 1 ounce. So we had to work with the Ohio Patrol, and God bless them, they did a great job. They changed some of their standards. All of our construction standards for our school buses in Ohio are governed by the Ohio Patrol. So they bumped that up, so we're able to put larger sanitizer in our buses. Okay, so we can put a dispenser, a certain size dispenser, but our drivers can have a 10-ounce bottle for personal use.
Bill, Bridget, can you advance the slide? You can go quickly to the first one. This is just I want to talk a little bit about, because I know you said that your board last night voted on kind of like next steps. Is that correct? So
yeah, last night, you are correct. Last night, our board voted on that they're going to go virtual for the first semester, the first 9 weeks. And, but I am still responsible to transport to my charters and my non-public schools during that time. So even though my APS students are going to be schooling from home, again, I have to transport my charters and my non-publics during this. So, and that's what we're in the process of doing this week, finalizing that. But we are going to go with the 2 per seat that we did get the green light for, and put everything in place. That's sanitizing the buses, certain times, multiple times on that. Now the school, like you said, like I said, the school's going virtual for the first 9 weeks. We did look at some of the other models, K through 3 going Mondays and Tuesdays, and 4 to 5 going Thursdays and Fridays, and all these different models. But when we're talking about transportation, I didn't want that to be the deciding factor to the school when they're trying to make their decisions on how they're going to do it in school. So that's why I put my plan out there about a month and a half ago. So,
Bridget, if you could advance to the next slide. it has some questions. This is from the state, and you said this was put out about a month ago, but you can, that's just for the attendees to kind of see some of the questions that you're addressing, but you have some, a little bit more specific, one of the questions I have also is just what things have you maybe even looked at but decided against as well? As you're making decisions, I'm sure you're evaluating lots of criteria. I think a lot of people who are on listening today are like, they're weighing things. So you have some things also that you've ended on this point. If you could kind of give us a little bit of the thought process involved in what you're doing, maybe what you ruled against.
The one thing when it comes to the buses, the Ohio Department of, the Highway Patrol, they approved the sanitizer. They also approved a driver barrier to go right behind the driver in the bus. We kind of ruled that out in our district, and I'm hearing a lot of the districts in Ohio are ruling that out. First of all, there's an expense to it. You're going to be taking away a seat that we could be putting some students in or a student in. And the barrier was not really going to stop the flow of the virus, I guess you want to say. It was still open. The driver wasn't in a sealed compartment, let's put it that way. And so we ruled that out right away. And I don't know of any districts in Ohio that are doing that. Again, every state's a little different. There may be some states out there that are allowed to put a plastic barrier around the driver completely, but in Ohio, we're not allowed to do that.
We heard in several of our webinars that a lot of them are forbidden to, number one, add anything to the bus. And there's also just safety concerns because of potential glare. There's it's like whenever you solve one problem, sometimes you can create another problem. And that was one of the ones that I had heard, that you might actually create a visibility issue with the driver as well. Are your drivers going to be wearing face masks? That's the question I think a lot of people, Lisa, Chad as well. Do students have to wear face masks on the bus? Are drivers wearing face masks on the bus? How do you deal with, Chad, Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, we're requiring it that all drivers and students will be wearing their masks. One of the things, I want to know how you pass off that sanitizer. Because Colorado will not allow sanitizer on the buses due to the flammability. So I kind of want to have like a basis of maybe where I could even pull off even having a small tube of it. But we can't have any barriers either. So that's why we're requiring everybody to have masks. We can't put anything up in our buses.
So we're allowed. So we've actually piloted our bus runs here over the summer. We had a summer school and return to play activity bus that we've been piloting, and so we got our plan approved by the Board of Health, and we highly recommend that each of you consider doing that if you haven't already, just to get their stamp of approval. So for us, we have hand sanitizer mounted on the front panel of the bus. The Highway Patrol has allowed that in the state of Ohio for us. Kids,
when you kids come in off they're entering the bus right there on the right-hand side. They boom. Okay.
Correct. So basically, they use the handrail. After they use the handrail, they're taking a squirt of hand sanitizer, and then going back into their assigned seat. So we have been loading the buses like an airplane, where you're loading from the back of the bus to the front of the bus. Each student has been assigned an assigned seat, and each student is asked to wear their mask along with the driver. Sit as close to the window as they can. The only exception to a seat for us is if there's a family group of brother and sister, they're allowed to sit on the same seat together. We do have our windows open for cross ventilation, and that's a recommendation our county public health department provided for us. And then when they leave the bus, we're exiting from the front of the bus to the back of the bus. And when we're talking about arrival and dismissal, we've talked about at dismissal time that the principals and the teachers are going to have to help us in loading the bus by assigned seats. So again, we're loading from back to front so that we don't have kids going down the aisles and infecting or influencing the 6-foot rule on the bus. So those are some of the things we've started to pilot this summer. We're the final thing we're talking about is whether we take temperatures of students when they get onto the bus. And we've had we're trying to figure out the best way of doing that, or if we do it based on how accurate the thermometers are. We're still evaluating that in our pilot phase right now.
So you had summer school where you had transportation for summer school?
Correct.
And this worked okay, this pilot plan?
Yep. So we've been transporting about 15 buses a day currently, and we've marked all the assigned seats. We've assigned them with numbers similar to, again, an airplane type concept.
Are kids assigned to a same spot like day in, day out, or is it assigned for that given ride? So like Tommy always sits in the first, spot in the back of the bus, and so every day these are assigned seats, or does it change day to day, but you just know who's sitting where on any given day?
Yeah, so every day it's the same assigned seat, and it's based on the route. And so based on that pickup, we're assigning the kids based on when they're going to be picked up or when they're going to be dropped off. So that's the order that we're asking kids to load and unload the bus. And so it's worked pretty well for us. Kids are learning to line up correctly at the bus stop that way as well. So we've had pretty good success with it over the first.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Technology sometimes looks like I don't mean to jump on you.
No.
So someone asked if your plan's available, and if it is, if you could send it to us, we'll pop it on our best practices page, along with Bill's, what the district put out as well. We'll have on our best practices page.
Sure.
Great. So Lisa, go ahead, Bill.
Okay, Lisa, to answer your question about the sanitizer, I don't know if you can see this. This is what we're doing for the drivers. Okay, it's a personal hand sanitizer, and we're using the mist spray. We're not using the gel because we feel the gel is going to be more of a mess on the bus, so we're using the mist. And fortunately, we have a local distributor that makes it, it's only like 20 miles from us, so we can get it there locally. And what Chad said is the dispenser is a certain size by Ohio specs. That we can mount the dispenser in the bus. So we're doing the same thing. Fortunately, Chad and I, we both belong to the same health department here in Ohio. So many of the things that he just said is what we're doing also, right, in our district too.
So Lisa, James threw out a suggestion to you as well, and I don't know if Bill and Chad, you guys have this experience. They said that there is a water-based hand sanitizer that is non-flammable and non-combustible. I don't know brand names, but James throws that out there. I don't know if anybody can verify that. I want to get some questions out. One, I was going to go out from Paula. So these are a little bit out of sequence here, so just please bear with me here. Paula wants to know, with increased demand in bus routes because of the limited number of numbers on the buses, are you still doing sports trips? So you guys,
well, for us we have CHASA, and our CHASA is deciding whether they're going to have sports and what that's going to look like. We do have some of our schools where they are practicing, for instance, like soccer. That's still up in the air for us, the decisions that we're waiting for CHASA to make, which is the state governing.
Okay. How about you, Bill or Chad?
We're not doing sports right now. And actually, they don't, in Ohio, they don't start until August 1st officially. But I got a feeling, this is my gut feeling, since we're going to go the first 9 weeks online learning, it's going to be pretty hard for our board to bring the kids in to do sports if they're not bringing them in for the school. So, but that's a board and a superintendent's decision. But right now we are not transporting for sports.
Okay.
And for us, there's a lack of certainty, of course, in regards to where athletics goes in the next few months. Some things that we're considering just as far as having alternatives. One is we do look at our own spare bus inventory and look at trying to do some of that. We also have been looking at some charter bus companies to at least get us to the site. And then that's usually during when we're running our routes. And so then we have an arrangement with our union to then they just take the students out and then our union then picks the students back up at their athletic contest. Also, I know our various leagues across the state are talking about whether they need to look at when start times for athletic contests are. And so we've been working with our athletic directors throughout the region and just making sure we're talking through different scenarios and a time when we're not certain what it's going to bring us in the next few weeks.
Great. John asked, I'm going to widen this question. John's question is, can you address special needs and those special needs students' abilities to wear a mask? And I'm going to widen that to include elementary school kids, and also what happens when a child comes and doesn't have a mask? Do you have extra masks? That kind of stuff. So how are you addressing both special needs and also just the younger kids that, you know, aren't really super familiar with this, you know, having to wear a mask? Anybody can answer, or all of you can answer it.
So yeah, go ahead.
John.
Go ahead,
John.
So we are basically we have a child-sized mask that we are providing if a student gets their mask, and we've honestly needed those. So it's good to have a group of those, a supply of those available. We're still working through some of the things in regards to exceptions to wearing a mask. And then for our elementary students, we have been transporting all the way down to kindergarten currently, and everyone's been required to wear a mask at this point. And for the most part, I would say that's going pretty well.
Great. Anybody else?
We're going to be requiring everybody to wear masks. Just to follow up with, I think it was Lisa earlier, that was one of the biggest things that our health department approved our plan, was because everybody was wearing masks, including the drivers wearing masks. We are not going to do the temperature check for our regular buses, but for what we call it, our ortho buses, we are going to do temperature checks because we do house stops, and we usually have an extra person on the bus with there, so we will do temperature checks, and if the child is a fever, then we can release the child back to the guardian. All of our independent contracted van drivers that we've got about 160 of those. They will be taking temperatures of the children, and because they do house stops there too. There are going to be some problems that we see with some of our special needs wearing masks, and we understand that. And we're going to have to work through that also. And if a student does come to the bus without a mask, then we will have masks. We just on the bus, we just received our first order of masks. Actually, this came in yesterday. But then that's the other thing that we had to address is that what if a student repeatedly doesn't come to the bus with a mask on? Then we have to deal with a discipline issue with that. So that's we have to work with the buildings with that, the building principals with that. PTAs are working up supplying masks. You know, there's lots of groups. We're fortunate in our area. There's lots of groups working on donating, you know, the handmade masks and everything like that. And with the governor in the state, he's made the ruling that everybody in Ohio, when you're in public, you have to have a mask on. So he just made that ruling, I believe it was last week, at the end of last week. So
quick question on, you know, those of you who are going to be having attendance on the bus. I got a bunch of questions. I'll try to boil them all down together. They want to know about the afternoon runs and dismissal. So are the same kids going to be assigned to the same seat in the same spot going back home? How do you do that? How do you load the buses? Are you know, the reversal of the route? So you have what's that look like, dismissal? And any of you who are doing assigned seating can feel free to jump in on this. But Chad, I know you mentioned it. How are you handling that on dismissal in the afternoon?
Yeah, so as much as we're able to mirror the routes, that's our goal, is to try to keep it as simple as possible for especially our elementary students. Of course, there might be instances where that might not be possible because of alternate stops needed or whatnot. But our goal is to have the kids line up in their order of when we're planning on dropping them off. So and like I said, with summer school, it's worked pretty well so far.
Okay. Anybody else?
We're doing the same type of thing where we have rebuilt our routes so they're mirrored. So as the students are coming out, they have their temperature checked before they get back on the bus, and they do their hand sanitizer. And then the same thing is the other two, is that we do board from the back to the front, kind of like they do airlines, and they will be having their assigned seats too as well.
And the other thing too is I'm hopefully most of the people that are listening today are using Transfinder as their software, and work with your support team because they can create the reports that shows you who's getting on the bus first, or I should say who's getting off the bus last in the afternoon. So we have InfoFinder LE, and the principals can log in and they create their own report. And now they know how to load the kids in the afternoon for us. So
right, well, thank you, Bill.
That's what we're using.
Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
I love LE.
You guys are the best. Just so everybody knows, that was all on their own. I appreciate it, though. So you just set me up then for a question I'd like to ask then for all of our attendees. And I'm going to ask you guys as well. You know, we are going to eventually, I hope we all feel that we're going to eventually return to normal. We don't know when that's going to be. And so one of the things we are trying to get a sense from people is what kind of tools that they're going to want and need once the immediacy of the COVID-19 situation, you know, kind of eases at least. So Bridget, could you put up on the screen? Here we go. I'm going to ask all three of our panelists, but for a minute or so, if you could, all of our attendees, if you could just take a minute and pick all that apply, but what tools would you like to implement post-pandemic? And I just love that expression, post-pandemic. I think we all can't wait for that to become a reality. So upgrade your routing software? Is it student attendance? That's now all of a sudden a very, very important tool. Driver navigation, parent app, or cameras on the buses. You can pick one, you can pick all five, or you can pick the top that matter to you. So we're going to keep a minute on that. And I'm going to start with Lisa, and then go to Bill, and then Chad. Anything that you guys are looking at down the road as on your to-do list or your wish list, I guess I should say?
All of it.
Okay.
It's nice because with Transfinder, we do have most of this, which is really nice. We did implement the parent app, so the parents can watch when the students are getting on and off the bus. And that's going to help us when we get to the stops to have the parents ready, so we can have the students disembark the bus a little bit faster. And not to have to put in a plug for you, but it's some of the best software that I've used and had a chance to use. It just really makes it simple with having to know where your buses are at all times, exactly when the kids are getting on and off for parents. We love the camera systems. And so I think all in all, with what Transfinder is doing, it's a whole package. And I think it really helps to be seamless with our transportation department.
Super. That is good to hear. Bill?
Unfortunately, here in Akron, we have all those upgrades and updates. We're already using it.
Great.
The one thing I would you might want to try to use some of your CARES money. You talk to your treasurer, you may be able to move some of that money that the schools were offered and maybe offered again. You may be able to move some of it towards upgrading things if you can prove to your treasurer it's because of the COVID-19. I know when this first came down back in April, my treasurer's office, they went through every purchase in the district, but I'll talk about transportation. They went through every purchase in transportation, and they tried to verify that money could be used towards the CARES money. So you might be able to do it, but that's a local decision and working with your treasurer's office.
Great. That's helpful. I'd love, that might be a future webinar, Bill. You're making me think about who has been able to successfully use CARES for the types of things you just mentioned. And how about you, Chad?
So we're in the process of implementing the student attendance here for this fall, and I think that's going to be really helpful, as I think Bill alluded to, as far as really having a good idea of the order that kids are loading the bus, student accountability, and we're really impressed by the student attendance software that we'll be implementing here this year, and then we're moving forward on driver navigation and the parent app in the upcoming year. One of the things that I'm very excited about in regards to Transfinder's offerings is the driver navigation. I've always been frustrated by having a paper copy of the route sheet, especially when you have a substitute who's trying to learn a route on the fly. And so having that driver navigation, I think, is really important moving forward, and we're excited about that.
Great. Awesome. Got a question from Karen here. I'm going to open it up to all of you. She said, we're doing hybrid routes. She wants to know, is it easier to create new data sources or copy existing routes? So I know it's getting specific there, but anybody have any thoughts on that?
So using Transfinder, I did a separate route, so that way I didn't touch my originals. If I need to go back to those, I could just populate those back in. I just did my hybrid ones as a separate one for this year. So that way, if I ever have to go back and forth, I can. I didn't delete routes. I didn't do anything. I didn't want to have to reinvent the wheel. I just did mine separately.
Great. How about you, Chad or Bill, or both?
The same thing. We created a separate database up until about a month ago. We were using the current database of this school year, and then that we got all of our rollover and our imports then, and then we made the switch. All of our routes were created. Everybody was on a bus. So then we switched over to the new database, and when the time does come that we have to switch back, we'll just redirect the import to the original database, and then my routers will spend, a couple days updating the new students that came in, but all the routes will be there intact.
Great. Chad, same thing?
Pretty similar. I think we found that copying the routes for us has provided more challenges that we've really looked at redoing, like starting a little closer to from scratch in regards to our routes. Just because we're really dramatically changing the number of kids on a bus, and so that's the approach we've taken. But we certainly went back and forth on which way would be better, and we just landed on being more from scratch.
This is kind of a quick question. This comes from Sandra, and basically she wants to know who's responsible for purchasing or providing the PPE required by the state, the school or the bus contractor, or is your answer C?
Both.
Well, in the past, it would be, it's the school, and you're just talking about the contractor. Up until this year, we also had a contractor they ran like 35 buses for us, but we were not able to secure that contract this year. They would have increased the amount of the bid to take care of the PPE and all that additional sanitizing and cleaning of the buses. So we would have paid for extra for the route. A lot of what we're doing is coming out of the CARES money is in Ohio, at least for Akron. Our treasurer department has set up a special account, and that's where money was put in there for us, and that's strictly for the CARES, and that's strictly because of the COVID-19.
I want to jump on something real quick, just because I know Bill and Chad, you guys know each other. You guys are not that far from each other, and I think that we talked about this a little bit offline about the importance of, and we all agree, I think the school transportation industry actually is a very special one, because there really is just a lot of camaraderie. People really do share ideas, best practices, and lots of tips. That's why we're doing a webinar, frankly, is people just are looking for more and more and more information on what's working for one district that maybe we could borrow in our district. I'm just wondering about, with the two of you, how often, how have you guys been able to work together? Where do you guys share ideas? What would you recommend to people watching this that maybe don't have a relationship with a neighboring district? What's even a good way to start the conversation? Any thoughts on that? It's not on my list of questions, but it came to mind as I was just looking at the two of you, knowing that you guys have a high regard for each other.
Chad, go ahead.
You're speechless.
So I'm a firm believer in trying to make sure you have, as Bill alluded to earlier, build your networking groups. And Bill and I were introduced to one another through one of our purchasing consortiums, Ohio Schools Council, which has really worked together in creating business manager groups and transportation supervisor groups, and so we've worked off of there. But I think, especially in the last several months, the more you're able to get a smaller group of people together, where it's a number of like 5 or 6 so people, and use a forum like Google Meet or whatnot, and just a quick list of the things that are confronting each of you. I've found those to be so fruitful, and Bill and I have had a few of those as well, where it's just really helpful to know that we're all in this together, and just to brainstorm different things. So those are the best half hour to hours that you can ever spend is in a networking group like what we're doing here today.
Great. Bill, anything you want to add? Or Lisa, I don't know if you want to also refer to another district that maybe you partner with on ideas.
Well, for us, we have a mountain division, so Colorado is really good about everybody helping everybody out. So the small districts work with the large districts, and that's where we were able to receive a lot of our information. So I do feel very blessed that Colorado is very seamless when it comes to that, and it really does come down to our state, who is Susan, who does a great job. She works with NAPT too as well, but she does help bring everybody together, and that has helped us get through this. And I think it's very important, like what Chad said too, is that make those connections. Do any sort of Zoom meets or put it out there, your questions, things, thoughts, whatever, and ask for a response. And you'll find that a lot of other transportation folks want to help. They want to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's true. That is really true. Before I forget, I do have a couple quick questions I want to ask on morale, actually, for your departments and how you're morale. But Bridget, can you give me the responses to the poll question?
Hi, yes. So of those who voted, the highest was 77% are looking at student attendance. And then both driver navigation and parent apps had 40% voting, that's what they'll be implementing, and 35% for upgrading their routing, and 21% for camera systems.
Okay. Does that line up with what you guys would think in terms of priorities?
I personally, my first priority when I first came to Akron was the cameras. Okay.
Really?
Being in an urban district, we tend to have some issues on the buses, and I wanted at least try to protect my drivers as much as possible. The second thing that I implemented was navigation. I needed to know where those buses were. We had a scare one time where it took us 15 minutes. We had a bus accident. We kind of knew at the area where the bus was, but we didn't know for sure where it was at. And it took us 15 minutes to find the bus. And that was a very long 15 minutes.
I'm sure.
And then we went navigation, and right after that we went to navigation. But we can't upgrade the Route Finder Plus yet, but we will. We can't wait till we get that. We've been waiting a couple of years for that, so we want to get that as soon as we can. But there's just one piece that's not working for us yet, so we will hopefully have that by the fall.
Super.
I'd like to interject with William. I think too, I agree, there's been so many times that cameras have saved not only the drivers, but the students as well. I think that's a must. And there's been several times where our drivers go on their trips, and it's nice to be able to help them navigate if they get lost. We can populate them up and exactly where they're at and tell them how to find their way. So I think navigation is another plus, not only knowing where they're at all times, not that you're spying, but also that you're knowing where they're at and being able to help them be that extra eye in the sky for them.
Right. Quick question just about, and again, very quick, because I have two quick rapid fire questions. But the first one is just, how's the morale of your team, and how, if it's when it, probably ebbs and flows during this time of uncertainty, how do you, as leaders, kind of bring up that morale. So I'm going to start with Chad. We'll go Chad, Lisa, William, and then I want to get your final takeaways for today. But just real quickly, how's morale and how do you try to keep it up?
So I think honestly our morale has been pretty good. We're lucky to have a great transportation department and staff. I think one of the biggest things that we've talked about is how big of a role we're playing in helping kids get back to I don't know how you can ever call it a more normal, but at least some resemblance of being able to get them back to school and with their teachers, and so we play a crucial role and in providing for the safety and of our students, and so I think that has been one of our focal points moving forward. But with that, I think most of our drivers have really been very excited to help out the kids and get them to school.
Good. Sounds like they are charged up already. How about you, Lisa?
So I feel very blessed with my group. They're awesome. They love the students, and that's why they keep coming back each year for them. Unfortunately, we lost a couple students at the very beginning of this COVID, and it really hit hard to the community. And so the drivers are really proactive of trying to figure out ways, reading on the buses, wanting to become tutors in the school to helping with the food deliveries and being out there with the community, which is very positive. We do a lot of things like scavenger hunts and things that we could do together as a team. And they did such a great job dressing up and doing all kinds of crazy things. And so it really makes it fun when you can put them out there in a different spin and make them have fun at their job, but also they do take their job at heart.
I know we're adults, but we still like to have fun. I know at Transfinder, we've had, when we're in the building, we have certain types of themes we do and everybody gets into it. We're all working remotely right now. And so we're in our third week. I think we're in our third week of themes. And last week was Christmas in July. The first week was Get Moving, and we had a virtual 5K and all these other types of things. And this week it's about food. So you got to do things, we are human beings. We do like to have fun, and you got to do those kind of things.
We do that same thing each month.
Yeah.
My mechanics are fine. They're keeping busy, so they're glad they have a job, and they're doing a great job, because in Ohio we have inspections and through the Ohio Patrol, so they're doing that. My office pretty much the morale is okay, because in the last weeks I have 50% new people in my office, so they're happy. They're in the office and they got a job and working there, so they're good spirited. So half of them are like new to the district, or new to the office, I should say. The drivers, it's a mixed group of morales. There is some people that are depressed about it. It's the uncertainty, especially now. Last night that the board voted to go 9 weeks online, so the emails and the text messages and everything else were going this morning and last night, and I can assure them that there's going to be some work. I can't assure them that everybody's going to be working at this time, because we don't know yet. The one thing that was helpful to kind of keep the morale up is doing Zoom or Google Meet with the entire department.
Yep.
And if anybody, I recommend doing that, but I would also recommend giving yourself about, depending on how large your department is, giving yourself about 2 to 3 weeks to get that all to work, because there's a lot of different levels of technology that's in a department. Some people I mean, they can bounce around there real easy. Other ones, it's very difficult for them. So when I did this back in April, started getting them on the Zoom meetings, it took probably about 2 weeks before I could get everybody going. Just getting them to use the department email was challenging, but we took care of that a couple months ago, so we're good to go.
One of our earliest webinars, the transportation office started seeing people who did not like certain types of technology. They didn't want to have a district email. They didn't want to have direct deposit. They all got on board very quickly, and so that was one of the, I guess, positive things they saw. Okay.
Actually,
go ahead, Chad.
Actually, I think some of us have some professional development days coming up at the beginning of the school year that I would encourage people to consider doing some of that technology training too, because I think it definitely helps and might ease another transition if we have one.
That's an excellent point. I want to close with, so I want you to think just for one brief moment, like you're a presidential candidate. So I need a sound bite. That's all. I'm not talking politics really, but I need like a quick sound bite of one takeaway. So people have stayed on through the whole webinar. Really, most people have just stayed on through the whole thing, listening to everything you're saying. And so, what's the one thing that you would want them to take back to their office, maybe to their boss or to their staff, whatever it may be? One takeaway in a sound bite. I'm going to start with you, Bill, and then go to Lisa, and then with Chad, and then I'll close us out. Bill, takeaway.
Well, I'm not sure if this is considered a takeaway, but we're all in this together. No one has ever experienced this. By working together, we'll get through it together.
Excellent. That's good. That's an excellent takeaway. Lisa.
Thanks a lot. You just took what I was going to say, but I think the same thing. I think it's just being together, working together, and supporting each other. I think that's extremely important.
And it means you have to communicate that.
You have to communicate
that. Chad?
So I had a similar thought, but I think in addition, just try to stay as positive as possible. Try to stay as calm as possible, and just realize that flexibility is really the key to all this. And what we know this week might be dramatically different than next week, and just accepting that challenge and stay as positive as you can.
Chad, I almost had an entire webinar go by without someone using the word flexible. And that has really been one of the key things that everybody needs to be, is in your positions, is to be flexible, because what happened yesterday may have changed and altered tomorrow's plans. And so I almost made it through the whole webinar.
Sorry.
That's a very good point, and I'm just teasing you. That's an excellent point. Stay positive, because it's easy to get into that negative spin. And if, like all of you said, if you can encourage each other, and I know at our company as well, we all try to. I had a meeting this morning, and it was all about, hey, sometimes you have not the best day, so come alongside your colleague and try to pick them up. So I want to thank you, Bill, Lisa, and Chad, for joining us today. I know you guys are very busy, and I do thank you for your time and sharing your insights with us today. And I want to mention again, this webinar will be on our best practices page, as well as some of the tools that have been mentioned today will be on our best practices page. This is anchored off of transfinder.com, so it's very easy for you to find. If you do have a story, we are always looking to bring more and more people, bring their stories out to share and see what tips we can glean from others. So please send those stories to mystory@transfinder.com. And I'm just going to warn you right now, that could make its way into a white paper or a webinar down the road. So please share that. And then finally, next week, we'll be back at it again with another webinar. And I just want to again thank everybody for attending And I want to thank our panelists so much for being with us today. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Be safe.
You too. Yes, be safe.